Well, Nashville Predators are going to have to finish their tough December without one of their best defensemen. We'll talk about who needs to step up to replace Ryan McDonough. Plus, if you're GM of the Nashville Predators, what's one move you make for the rest of the season that helps shore up this team? And Western Conference Wednesday, we'll take a look at some teams that are performing maybe above their pay grade and ask, are they for real? That's coming up today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. We are your free Nashville Predators podcast that's available to you wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime who still has a job because she's not the one that traded A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles.
I would not have done that. For the record, I would not have done that. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and editor at InsideThePreds.com.
Well, in retrospect, of course you wouldn't have done that now.
I was not a fan of that even at the time. I really was not a fan of that.
Well, there's all the articles that have come out have been John Robinson wasn't fired from the Titans because, of A.J. Brown. There's just a lot of stuff. It came 2 days after A.J. Brown torched the Titans.
Yeah. Look,
I mean, if it wasn't, you made it look that way.
It had to have been. Look, the A.J. Brown thing has been a thing. You remember Mike Vrabel, his reaction?
Yeah.
When they traded him, everybody knew Mike Vrabel does not do poker face. He does poker language. And you knew that was bothering him. And I really, and then to come back and have A.J. Brown just, kind of tear up the Titans, you can put these pieces together and it makes such an interesting narrative. It makes a really good story, but man, I don't know, Titans. It's interesting to do it during the season. A lot of people are like, should have waited till the end of the season. I don't know.
I mean, I can't remember a team who has basically more or less guaranteed a playoff spot. Like the Titans would have to have one of the worst collapses in NFL history.
Yeah.
And either the Colts or Jaguars would have to have one of the best runs in NFL history to get the Titans out of the playoffs. So, I mean, they're pretty close to a guarantee. And 7-5? So it's not they're a bottom feeder. This has to be one of the first times I've seen a playoff team mid-season get rid of their GM while they're still in the playoff hunt. It's absolutely wild. And
that's why I think there's a message in it. The time, I agree. Timing is everything. Timing a lot of times tells a story. Mm-hmm. That's why I think, there's something to this whole A.J. Brown just stuck it to us and you stuck it to us when you traded A.J. Brown. So let's bring this full circle and we're going to stick it to you.
Yeah. What we were talking about this before. What would be the Predators equivalent that would get David Poile fired mid-season?
If it almost feels like you would have to get rid of somebody on the level of almost Philip Forsberg, almost
Roman Josi.
Take your best player who's the one that you absolutely kind of have to make all the other people good. And then Mikael Granlund. Last season, Mikael Granlund.
Yeah.
Last season's Mikael Granlund. Yeah. Take that person and just be and yeah. But would that do that? Let's dig deeper into that question, Nick. What would he have to do to get fired mid-season? And is there actually anything?
I thought you were gonna say Rem Pitlick all of a sudden becomes a 60-goal NHL score, which, hey, he got one last night. So
He's on his way. I still look, y'all.
59 more to go this year.
It can happen. But I will say this, Rem Pitlick is a symptom of what I think is a little bit of a hitch in the GM giddy up in Nashville. But that may be a whole nother podcast. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think that David Poyle would have to do to get the old midseason?
I don't know. Right now, it kind of seems like he's immune to getting away with pretty much anything. So,
Yeah.
like, it would
But
be
is
like,
that bad? I mean, honestly, let's have an honest conversation because, Twitter, everything is elevated.
mhm.
Is David Poyle a terrible GM?
I don't think he's a terrible GM.
Do you think he's a GM that needs to go?
I mean, let's see how the Predators do the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were up to me, and I think I've
Mhm.
said this before, I would have let go of David Poyle in 2013 when they let go of Barry Trotz. Was it 2013 or 2014? I think that might have been 2014.
Mhm.
Because I would have said this regime has been in charge for 15, 16 years and hit a wall. I would have gotten a whole new, fresh start. Like, I don't think David Poyle's a bad GM. I really don't. I know a lot of people are hitting up the fire Poyle thing.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think he's kind of caught between eras right
Mhm.
now. He wants to, he's putting the Preds with like the old school mentality in mind, but he's attempts to, everybody's like saying those, well, the Preds, they can't do this old school mentality. They got to get faster. They got to get more finesse. David Poyle, to his credit, tried that. It didn't work.
Mhm.
Like, I have a picture of Kyle Turris I can show everybody if you want. Like, so,
Ouch.
I mean, I don't think David Poyle's a bad coach, or bad GM. I
Mhm.
just think it's, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's a bad GM.
Yeah. You look back at a lot of, even like I was looking back at, like, okay, what were some of the things just recently, like in the off season, that he did or didn't do that people were like, hashtag fire Poyle, and some of the people that he signed, like he signed Kevin Lankinen. And I'll be
Yeah.
honest, I was one of those people that I was like, somebody stop this man.
I was wrong about Kevin Lankinen.
I was wrong about Kevin Lankinen.
I will sit here and scream that. I was like, I thought that was the most pointless move of this offseason. And
Yes.
boy, that is looking like a absolutely team-changing move right there.
Yes. I think about that. I think Nino Niederreiter, great signing. I wonder if we missed some opportunities, but you look like Jordan Gross is somebody that he signed. Kiefer Sherwood is somebody, and I know what everybody is like. Kiefer Sherwood, he burned out. He's no good. Y'all just wait. He may come back. And when he does, he'll have enough of you. So you look at all of these things, and I was one of those too. I was like, when he signed Kevin Lankinen, and I'm like, please take $1.5 million and flush it down the toilet next time so we don't have to take up a locker space. Like, there is no reason for this. But all of these little things that he has done, some of them are panning out okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, he brought back Mikael Granlund multiple times. First on a prove-it contract, then on like a big contract.
Yep.
I mean, he got the Forsberg deal done. He got Roman Josi locked up long term.
Yeah.
And he's had some hits.
Yeah. The other thing that I think that he did that caused a lot of raised eyebrows recently, but I think in the end was a genius move, was exposing Duchesne and Johansson in the expansion draft and protecting Jeannot. Not necessarily so much necessarily about Jeannot, but I think the message that he sent to Duchesne and Johansson was received. I don't think that move is so much about Jeannot as them.
I think you got to give Ron Francis at Seattle a fruit basket for not having that one bite him in the butt too.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I'm like, look, like bold move, but I think,
Yeah.
like I
It,
said, David
it sent
Poyle
a
is a
message.
name and a verb. He's gonna David Poyle.
Yeah, it sent a message, but it is also one of those things. If Matt Duchene is in Seattle right now and having the season he did last year for the Kraken, I think everybody's like, really? Like,
Really?
this is what happens?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's made some interesting moves, and I don't know. I'm not on the fire Poyle yet.
Yeah. What if Ellie Tolvanen winds up getting traded and becoming like a 50-goal scorer
Ellie Tolvanen
somewhere?
is going to wind up traded.
Yeah.
Ellie Tolvanen is going to be a successful forward somewhere else. Like I have had to in recent weeks just make peace with that myself. And
Yeah.
and I don't like it, but I mean, I don't see how else this is going to play out.
That's,
So,
I mean, yeah, I mean that's somebody who needs fresh air. Well, hey, let's talk about that in a second because we are going to talk about one trade we would make if we're the GM. Plus, Preds lose Ryan McDonough for 2 to 4 weeks. Is there anybody in Milwaukee, primarily named Jordan Gross, that can step up and carry that load for the next couple of weeks for the Nashville Predators? We'll talk about that in a second. But first, want to mention today's show is sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer, esports. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts like the one you're listening to right now, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And let's talk about moves we would make. We talked about right before the break, Ellie Tolvanen. You think it's a foregone conclusion that Tolvanen's going to get traded, moved somewhere, maybe put on waivers.
that
I
is
mean,
not acceptable, but go ahead.
but at the same time, like, if you're an NHL team, how motivated are you to give up probably what the Predators would want in a trade for Ellie Tolvanen? Because it's look, and we've talked about this before. Like, last season was bad scoring wise, but you look at kind of the metrics and you saw he was doing a lot of other things right, pretty good 200-foot game. This year is just bad. Like he's got kind of no numbers to back up anything he's doing kind of well right now. I mean, but
He also hasn't had much of a chance to turn that around. If you look at like Roman Yossi, his numbers weren't exceptional at the beginning of the season when he had like that
sure.
5-game dry spell. So, but yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, his resume right now for this season, not terrific.
Yeah, I mean he's trending more towards Mika Salamaki than Mikhail Granlund at this point.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, that is, I think, something Poyle should address sooner rather than later, because you can't just have him collecting dust. And honestly, the best thing for Tolvanen right now would probably be going back to Milwaukee and just playing somewhere, getting that confidence up, because it's starting to be clear. This is like the Victor Arvidsson from a few years ago. It's just you watch him, you watch how John Hines is kind of using him, and it's like, okay, it's good player, but it's not going to be here. Like, this isn't.
Right.
He's just not playing the way that John Hines wants to play long term. I mean, is it done? Does he go to Milwaukee? Does somebody claim him? I don't know. Like, he needs to be playing somewhere in order to play himself back. Milwaukee, if you're a Preds fan, is the best case scenario, because he can go in there, get some top 6 minutes, get his play going, and then maybe, if injuries or something happen down the road, you bring him back up. But again, like, there's other teams in the NHL that will look and they'll see a former first-round pick from 2017, not that long ago,
Right.
trying to find ice time to prove himself. And there's probably a lot of teams that are going to jump on that.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that path that you're talking about. Get him some ice time because he really has not had an opportunity this season to get his numbers up, to show his style of play, to increase his value in a trade. It would so break my heart if we put him on waivers and that's how we lost him. Because really, at the end of the day, whether he's a good fit here or not, Ellie Tolvanen is a talented hockey player who he has trade value. He has trade value. He's not in a position to increase that or to advertise that right now. And there is some dynamic there with Ellie Tolvanen, and I know that you talk about the Victor Arvidsson thing, and I can see where Victor Arvidsson didn't necessarily fit the system in as far as things like playing that kind of physicality. Arvidsson was more that zippy little speed. But it feels like Ellie Tolvanen's game should fit here, and I can't figure out why it doesn't. But I agree with you. Best case scenario for Ellie Tolvanen would be to go to Milwaukee to get ice time, to kind of find his game again, to find those things, like you said, that made his 200-foot game last season, pretty remarkable, that kind of kept him in the mix a little bit more than it has this season, and then see what happens. But I'll be honest with you, I've completely made my peace with the fact that we will probably not see Ellie Tolvanen as a Nashville Predator long term. I think it sucks.
Yeah.
But I just don't see how else this plays out.
Yeah. To make matters worse, Tolvanen drafted 9 spots ahead of Jason Robertson.
Oh gosh.
Who is
incredible.
Who's looking like one of the best goal scorers in the NHL. Let's look at some other options and let's put our GM hats on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there's a Tolvanen trade, or maybe this is something separate. What's one deal that you would make to bolster this current Preds lineup? Is there a position? Is there a player? Is there like somebody for a line that you would try to get to make this Preds team maybe a more complete team?
That's a great question. Honestly, and this is separate from the fact that we just lost Ryan McDonagh for 2 to 4 weeks. My first instinct is I would go out and get a defenseman, not because there aren't some good ones kind of in the pipeline eventually for the Nashville Predators, but where the team is right now, you have Mark Borowiecki out. Now you have McDonagh out, but even separate from those, you look at where the defense was running without Borowiecki, and I don't know where we're at. Like, I don't know how much we're going to see him this season. I don't know. Haven't heard anything, but he's not there. But you have a really great pairing. I'm loving the McDonagh-Josi. When we have McDonagh, I really like that. Ekholm-Carrier is a really solid defensive pairing in the NHL. Not just for the Predators, but just in the NHL. They're playing really well together. It's that third pairing where I'm like, Dante Fabro, he ain't nothing. Dante Fabro ain't nothing. Jeremy Lauzon, we have some opportunities for growth. Jordan Gross coming up. Okay, but I really feel like defensively, especially with you look at the number of shots that Kevin Lankinen took the other night. You look at, let's see how many shots that Tampa Bay Lightning put up against, UC Saros, who I'm assuming will be in net on Thursday night. I just think defensively, you get one more player to kind of shore up defensive depth, and I think that makes the Predators a little bit better.
Well, let's segue into that then, because of course the big news this week is Ryan McDonagh is out 2 to 4 weeks with a upper body injury. Preds won't disclose what, but I bet it has something to do with blocking a shot with his face.
That was awful.
Way to kind of hide that one, Preds.
Yeah.
If you're, Jordan Gross is the guy that's come up from Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
He has played with Roman Josi in the past, so I'm sure the Preds are maybe going to try to make that a first line. Does that give you any sort of confidence? I mean, the Preds are already missing Borowiecki. They've played with 6 defensemen on the active roster for pretty much ever since Borowiecki went down.
Yeah.
We talked about Jeremy Lazan, having some good games, but also some kind of bad moments. That 4-year contract is looking great
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
I mean, is this what you're going to be happy with for the next month of play with teams like Tampa Bay and Colorado twice and
Yes.
Dallas coming up? Like, do you look at this and be like, oh yeah, like this is what I'm rolling with? Or do you have to maybe start kicking around the NHL?
I mean, where this is at timing wise, I think is a big thing. This is December, and we've talked about it. December's a gauntlet. So it's this losing McDonough makes this so much more challenging. And let's be real, this was not going to be a cakewalk anyway for the
No.
Nashville Predators. So for me, yeah, I do. And look, I think Jordan Gross is extremely talented. He was the defensive player of the year in the AHL last year. This is somebody who is very talented. But you need somebody right now at the NHL level. Like, they have to be able to compete at the NHL level. Like, there's where the Predators are in the schedule, where they are in the standings, every single game counts. And this may not be the time for a player to plug in a player for, 5, 6, 7 games on a learning curve. They're going to have to, I think, unless David Poyles. But I don't know. I'm not 100% sure this is going to be the key to success. I don't know. I'm a optimist, but there's still a hitch in my giddy up about this.
Yeah, I mean,
What would you do? David Poyle's on the line. He wants to know what you would do.
well, first off, I would have retroactively not given Jeremy Lazan a 4-year contract.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it's 2 to 4 weeks for McDonough, so
Mhm.
it's like you don't want to blow up, a deal just for that, and I get that argument, but at the
Mhm.
same time, this is probably a good opportunity to see what your team is made of. You're thin on defense anyway. I would have liked to maybe see something other than Jordan Gross, and I don't know really what that is. I think you have to make a defensive move anyway at some point, whether that's bringing somebody else up from Milwaukee. Maybe that's waiting to see if there's somebody that hits like the waiver wire,
Yeah.
which I mean, there really haven't been a lot of defensemen. Maybe you're kicking the tires on, a depth deal. But again, this early in the year, I'm not really sure who's going to be like, sure, I'll give you a third pair
Right.
defenseman.
Right.
Everybody's going to kind of, wanting to see what they have, unless you're, Toronto or Ottawa, who are more gung ho and more interested in getting, top line defensemen. So, I mean, it's between a rock and a hard place for David Poyle. And look, it's coming at a bad time because Roman Yossi was absolutely cooking. And a lot
Mhm.
of that has to do with he got to be more free playing alongside Ryan McDonough. Ryan McDonough gave him an anchor.
Yes.
He didn't have to, kind of worry about, always kind of looking over his shoulder. His pairing kind of got burned earlier in this year because of that. And then, they move McDonough over. And that's the best that Roman Yossi has played on either side of the ice all season. Uh,
Absolutely.
do you have that same trust in Jordan Gross? Probably not.
Mhm.
Do you move Alexander Carrier up and try to get him going, even though that pairing didn't really work much earlier this season? Do you give Dante Fabro another shot up there on that top line? Somebody who has had some pretty good success with Roman Yossi. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Predators figure this out. But I don't know if Jordan Gross is going to be the guy that glues this defense together for the next, however little bit. This is where you really miss Mark Borowiecki, because Mark Borowiecki could
Yes.
have been that guy.
Yes. 100%, and hate to see McDonough go down, but I think because you've lost one more defenseman, you realize Mark Borowiecki is an even bigger loss than what it felt like before. So, no, I agree with you. And like you said, I mean, the Predators are coming into a really rough stretch. They've got some Central Division competition coming up, and they need to not suck. They need to win some of these games. So we're going to talk about some of the Central Division teams and the Western Conference in general, because it is, in fact, Western Conference Wednesday. So we're going to talk about a couple of these teams in the Western Conference that are making waves. And Nick and I are going to tell you, do we think that they are the real deal, or are they just stealing some wins? We're going to jump into that topic here in just a second. But first, we want to thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen for today. For your second listen today, you need to go and you need to check out Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today has all the games that matter across all of the different leagues, every sport you can think of. They cover the biggest stories happening today in sports. You get to go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes. You'll get insight from local experts that only Locked On can provide. So go and check out Locked On Sports Today. You can find it on this app. They are on YouTube, and you can check it out wherever you get your favorite podcast.
All right, so it's Western Conference Wednesday. It's time to look around some of the other teams around the Western Conference. And today, we're going to look at some of the surprises, and we're going to ask, is this for real? AKA, maybe this is a good team that is, high in the standings. And we're like, are they for real? Or maybe this is a team that we thought would be good. They're not. And we ask, are they really this bad? Or are they going to turn things around?
Yeah.
So, Anne, let's start with somebody that our Preds fans know very, very well, unfortunately. They're in our division. Believe it or not, they are now your division leaders, the Winnipeg Jets. 16-7-1 in first place. They have the same amount of points as the Dallas Stars, despite playing 2 fewer games. 7-3-0 in their last 10. And are the Jets really this good?
I'm going to be honest with you. Of all of the teams in the Western Conference that are surprising, the Winnipeg Jets, to me, I don't even know what to think about this. They have, they've got Pierre-Luc Dubois, they got Mark Scheifele, they've got Connor Hellebuck in net. So,
and that one, I think, is the reason, let's be honest, that they're as good as they are.
So that they're, that they're a team that's got a solid background. And Connor Hellebuck is a game stealer. He is an absolute thief. I also think it's interesting that he has David Riddick now as a backup. So probably Connor Hellebuck is going to play 78 games if the Jets want to stay where they're at right now in the standings. They've beat Dallas. Like, they've beat real teams. It's not like you look at their schedule and you go, okay, seriously. But I will say this, if you look at the Jets, like late February, early March schedule, they've got like the Devils, they've got the Rangers, they've got the Islanders, they've got Edmonton, they've got Tampa Bay. So I'm not going to buy in 100% on the Winnipeg Jets until later in the season, because I just can't wrap my mind around it.
Yeah.
Like, this feels a little bit like I see dead people.
Yeah. I will say, if it makes you question anything, in the same amount of games, they have scored 1 more goal than the Colorado Avalanche have, and have given up 5 fewer goals than the Colorado Avalanche have.
Are they good?
I also just looked to see if David Riddick was maybe having a bounce back year. Nope. Not at all.
I love David Riddick.
Somehow statistically worse than last season so far.
Bless.
Are
they the real deal, though? Like, what do you think about the win?
I agree. I mean, I'm not ready to buy in on them 100% right now. Like, let's see if Pierre-Luc Dubois is really this good. Yeah. Let's see if Blake Wheeler is really in the midst of a bounce back year, after 2 rough years. Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like the Predators last year, doesn't it? Where it's like you had, you know, Duchesne and Johansson not scoring, and then all of a sudden they're scoring at epic paces, and they have an all-world goalie and whatnot. So I think they're there. I mean, I think they're a good team. I just don't know if they're the type of team that's going to be leading the division at year end, or if they're more of a they're in the wild card conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I just can't get my mind around this one. Of all of them, this is the one that I'm like, I can't make it make sense.
Well, here's another one. A bad surprise. The St. Louis Blues are sixth in the Central Division right now, 12-14, and have given up the most goals in the Central Division. Statistically, the worst Central Division defensive team in a division that includes the Arizona Coyotes and Chicago Blackhawks.
Ouch.
And this was a team that we thought would maybe be the second best team in the Central Division. They were the team that gave Colorado arguably their closest fight in the
Yes.
postseason last year. Is this who the St. Louis Blues are? Are they bad, or are they underperforming and going to turn things around in the second half of the year?
I can't believe that they are where they are and that their season has unfolded the way that it has, because we had talked about this in the preseason. This was the team that I felt like nobody was talking about, but that really was going to be a Central Division threat.
No.
Doesn't look that great, at 12-14, it doesn't look that great. But here's what I will say. I really do think that the St. Louis Blues are a better team than their record reflects. I don't think where they are now is where they are going to end up. I think they're going to be in the mix. I think Nashville is going to have to pay a lot closer attention further down the line here, towards the end of the season in the early spring. They're going to have to pay a lot more attention to what St. Louis is doing, because I do think that the Blues are a good enough team that they're going to work out of it. I just don't want to see Jordan Binnington be too successful.
Jordan Binnington is having a very bad year, and I think that's where the conversation starts.
Yeah.
I also think they really regret giving Ville Husso up.
Oh my
Especially
goodness.
when you look at what he did last night in Tampa Bay. So,
Yeah.
giving the Red Wings a win over the Lightning. So, I mean,
Huge.
you look down their lineup, and Robert Thomas, who signed that big offseason deal, he's like having a good season, but not on pace to where it was last year. Jordan Kyrou took a while to get going.
Mhm.
Vladimir Tarasenko's kind of underwhelmed. So is Braden Shen. So a lot of these guys, Ryan O'Reilly, another guy. Ryan O'Reilly is always kind of talked about as maybe being like one of the best like defensive forwards in the NHL. And I know you hate this stat, Ann, but minus 17 this year.
Oof.
And I know not, say what you will about plus minus as a stat, but
It's an
if you're
indicator.
if you're on the ice for 17 more fewer goals than you're scoring, that
It's an indicator.
that kind of says something.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think they're gonna be able to make up ground as the season goes on, or do you think they're just gonna kinda be in the murky middle or lower?
I mean, theoretically, if Ryan O'Reilly, who's a statistical 70 to 80 point scorer, can get out of his funk, they need defense. They
Yeah,
need defense
they do.
bad, because a lot of their usual suspects like Colton Parayko and Justin Falk just haven't really been able to do it for them this year. So they need somebody to step up, and they need goaltending. But that's the
Yes.
thing, goaltending can be the thing that derails your team, and it's also theoretically one of the easiest things to fix.
Yeah.
If you're just look at UC Saros and the Preds, once the goaltending got fixed, all of a sudden, hey, the team is on a 7-1-1 run. How about
That's
that?
right.
Let's look at another team, Anne, who is maybe surprising some people a little bit. We've talked about this team a lot. The Seattle Kraken. 15-7-3 this year. They're only behind the Vegas Golden Knights. who are off to the best start in the Western Conference in the Pacific Division. They're 7-2-1, and Shane Wright just scored his first
Yes.
NHL goal last night against the Montreal Canadiens.
Wait, timeout. Who else scored in that game?
Rem
Rem
Pitlick.
Pitlick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Shane Wright, Rem Pitlick, same tier. Are the Seattle Kraken for real?
Okay, this hurts my heart to say. Now, look, taking nothing away from the Seattle Kraken, I think that they had a really good offseason. I mean, they got Andre Burakovsky, which I would have personally liked. Love watching little young Matty Beniers, 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points last night. Jared McCann is having a good season. God bless Martin Jones. He's hanging in there. They only lost 2 games in November. They lost to Winnipeg in overtime, and they lost to Minnesota in like a 1-0 game. Beat the Predators. They beat Vegas. But here's what's real. I'm not 100% sure that I think that this is going to last for the Seattle Kraken. But this is what I will say. It sure as heck is fun to watch. Like I am thoroughly enjoying watching the Kraken absolutely shock the pants off a number of teams. I don't know that I think that this is where they're going to end up at the end of the season by any stretch of the imagination, but I am going to enjoy every minute of their success because it's not come easy 2 years in. This was not the romantic Vegas Golden Knights expansion experience for the Seattle Kraken last season.
They're getting a lot of depth scoring, and that's one of the things that makes you go, okay, like maybe they're turning a corner. They have 12 players with double-digit points this year, and to put that in perspective, the Preds have 6.
Thank you.
I mean, and they're another team where it's like Martin Jones has been like statistically not that great, but he's been like doing enough to steal wins, and you think like maybe that needs to get better. I don't know. It feels like the way they're winning games is not quite sustainable, but I think you're starting to see the pieces come together. Andre Burakovsky was their star pickup, and he's got 26 points in 25 games. Jordan Eberle and Matty Beniers. Matty Beniers, 21 points this season and 10 goals. So he is kind of looking like a dynamic force. So I think you're starting to see the pieces and come together, but I still think we need maybe, another season of seasoning before we say, they're one of the best teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But they sure are fun, friends.
Yeah. Let's see if there's another team. All right. Let's talk about this. Can be the last one. Let's talk about the Colorado Avalanche, who are only 1 point ahead of the Nashville Predators in the standings. They're 13-9-1. Let's come about it from this. Do we think the Avalanche are going to get to the level where they were as good as last year? Because I think we both agree they're probably going to get better, especially when they start getting some of these injured players back. Good. But are they going to be good as last year, or was last year kind of the peak for like this last 2-year stretch?
Had the beginning of the season, I would have said, yes, this is going to be a team who is going to be as good. And they lost, like we said, they lost a couple of really big pieces. They lost Andre Burakovsky. They lost Nazem Kadri, which I think is a huge absence, and it's hard to fill. But the problem right now with Colorado is when you look at their injured list, it is about as long as their roster. I mean, they have Valerie Nichushkin is out, and he is a whole thing. Arturi Lankinen is out. They've got Nathan McKinnon is now out. I mean, just they are dropping like flies in Colorado. And it's, as much as I want to see the Predators do better than Colorado, it's almost become painful to watch. So I think so much about where Colorado's season ends up has to do with where these people, where their injuries bounce back. And, you hate to see it. I'm just not sure that even without the injuries, I'm not sure that they were going to be quite as dominant as they were last season, they were going to be good. And I think they may still be good, again, depending on when they get these people back. But they lost a couple of really big pieces. So I don't know. I am, of course, never ruling Colorado out. I will say this, the Predators played them twice this month. And if this injury list stays that long and these people need extra time, God be with them. Take some time. Take some extra time.
Yeah, I mean, they, I think, have struggled to kind of replicate what Nazem Kadri did for that team last year, 80-something points. That's a big gap to fill. And, they are, Arturi Lehkonen, you kind of think is sort of that natural replacement for Andrei Burakovsky in terms of depth scoring. He's been fine. He's done what he needs to do, but not having Val Nichushkin has hurt them.
Huge.
Not having Gabe Landeskog has hurt them.
Huge.
And now they're going to have to go a month without Nathan McKinnon. So that's the thing, Ann, is if even with those guys back, they're still going to be one of the most elite teams in the NHL. It's just they kind of don't have that back half that made them unbeatable like they did last year. When you randomly had like the Darren Helms of the world step up and just absolutely, score clutch goals and clutch games. And, they did bring back Andrew Cogliano, but, he's old.
Hey, now.
It's the nicest way to say it. Guys like Alex Newhook haven't quite taken that next step yet. So, I would say there's maybe some chinks in the armor for Colorado this year. Still going to be a great team, but
for sure,
maybe not where they were last year.
Yeah, and they have got to get healthy. Oh my goodness. I almost feel horrible for them. Almost.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
What do you guys think are the teams we mentioned in the Western Conference that are surprises going to stay surprises, or are they going to come crashing back down to earth and the usual suspects take over? Let us know. Leave us a comment on our YouTube page or send us a tweet at LO_Predators. We would love to hear your take. And give yourself a plug. Where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at ontheforecheck.com or wingitinmotown.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. However you are listening to us, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to subscribe. Really helps us out, and you get to know when we put out fresh shows for you. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with some Preds versus Lightning preview. See you then.